She was absolutely incredible, and everyone that could get to London wanted to be here.
And the draw, as you say, of royal families from around the world, heads of state, leaders of the realms too. It is hard to imagine anybody else who would bring such a congregation together.
And it's such a contrast between the Queen's Platinum Jubilee celebration of Thanksgiving, where we had lots of members of the royal family, lots of politicians and leaders, but today has been on a totally different standard. It has been so moving, so emotional, so beautiful.
And continues to be, passing the Royal Albert Hall, the landmarks of her reign and her forebears as well. In the service, though, what stood out for you? What was the moment which captured Her Majesty?
There were lots of references, of course, to Her Majesty, duty and service in the psalms that were chosen, in the lessons that were read. The sermon captured it wonderfully. You remember when she said, "We will meet again" at the end of, well, at the beginning of the COVID pandemic. And to echo that and to have built layer upon layer of that sentiment through the readings was absolutely incredible. But there also were two new pieces of music that were written specifically for this service, and they were beautiful. One was the second of the two. The voices at the end almost sounded like that peal of bells behind us, just ringing through the changes, and it was gorgeous.
On the streets now we're hearing people cheering, obviously celebrating Her Majesty's life, as we did when we were here for the Platinum Jubilee 3 months ago. What was the atmosphere like inside the Abbey? Was it solemn?
It was. It's a sort of reminiscent almost of the queues for the lying in state, because beforehand you made acquaintances with the people that were sitting around you, and they came from a range of walks of life, which was really lovely. But when the service started and the organ music kicked in, we all just got very, very, very quiet. And we watched processions coming in, but when that coffin draped in the standard with the sparkling jewels of the crown and the orb and the scepter there, we knew we were at someplace very, very special, witnessing something we'll never, ever witness again.
And as you looked at those famous faces invited, the Prime Minister of Canada, the President of America, those leaders from around the world, you know, what was their reaction to being there and making this journey?
Well, no one does pageantry and ceremonial in the way that the British do. And I think everyone gets swept up in that moment. The military, the precision, the costumes, it is just creating an atmosphere that you can almost drink in. No one could miss that, regardless of how large a nation or how small the nation they might represent.
And you have already worked with the new King and Queen Consort. We were looking at them as they were watching the coffin being transferred into the hearse, and you reflected on the sadness on the face of the Queen Consort. How difficult do you think this will be for them?
It has to be enormously difficult. What we can say is that the Queen embodied duty and service, and that is something that our King has drunk in throughout his life, you know, his 50 years of public service, and the Queen Consort being there by his side, providing support for him that he so greatly enjoys. He has told us as a nation that helps to give him strength. But they have done a tremendous job meeting people all around the nations. They must be tired, and they're doing so incredibly well. They must be emotional, but they're being able to hold it together. Our thoughts and our feelings and our prayers have to go out to them.
H.S. Golding, we really appreciate you talking to us. Thank you very much indeed. His Majesty's Lord Lieutenant of Bristol. Well, Westminster Abbey, the company of Rangers, 5,096 changes. Let's take you from here at Westminster Abbey now to Windsor.
Well, Anna, such moving scenes there in central London, soon to be replicated here at Windsor Castle, where the final committal service of Her Majesty the Queen will take place. Well, I'm joined now by Commodore Anthony Morrow, who was the last commanding officer of Britannia, the royal yacht, of course, who will be attending that committal service. Very good to see you, Commodore. First of all, before we talk about the service here in St George's Chapel, your thoughts about the funeral and the procession that we're witnessing right now?
Well, it's been a remarkable time, and building up to today has been, for us all, very, very special. And of course, for those of us who were very closely involved with the royal family in past years, are bringing that to mind with great honour and huge pride.
And you knew Her Majesty and, of course, Prince Philip, the Duke of Edinburgh, very, very well indeed. Of course, you were in command. I think you had 3 commands, didn't you?
No, I had 3 appointments to Britannia. Initially, as the Royal Barge Officer, and it was wonderful to be able to use Britannia's Royal Barge at the Diamond Jubilee on the river, which was a very special occasion. We could bring that together, and it was wonderful for them to be back in the Royal Barge in 2012. And then, of course, my second job was as this Royal Cipher Officer in Communications in Britannia for the Silver Jubilee, and then finally to be in command at the end for the last 3 years of Britannia, to take her to that very sad decommissioning.
And how well did you get to know Her Majesty?
Well, extremely well, in the sense that, of course, you know, we were there to serve Her Majesty on board with a proud and very special Royal Yachtsmen who were part of a very long service that we'd had together. And so they were much loved by, enjoyed also by the royal family, and the Queen particularly, with a lot of the sailors. And of course, Her Majesty and Prince Philip knew Britannia from the outset. And so throughout their lives, Britannia had a very special part, and we were there to support that.
And as a naval officer, what were your thoughts when you saw the state gun carriage being pulled by those naval ratings so precisely, in such a dignified fashion?
I have no doubt it was exactly that, because they have done remarkable training for this. A lot of very young sailors doing that for the first time. And I think for them, this will long be a memory to them. And for us all who'd served in the Royal Navy, to see that today as part of this remarkable day of farewell has been very special indeed.
And it continues, as we're saying, a remarkable day of farewell. Couldn't put it any better. The Guard of Honour forming up here on Chapel Hill in Windsor Castle itself, before we are going to see Her Majesty's coffin borne down in front of us, then into St George's Chapel. You're going to be part of that service. It's going to be smaller, a much more intimate service.
Very much so. And I think from our point of view here, with our memories, of course, I'm leading a team of 10 Royal Yachtsmen who are members of the association, of which I'm the chairman now, and this very proud association continues remarkably well. And so for them all to be invited to be here today, we've got remarkable seats very close to the west door for the arrival of the late Queen. And to be part of that today, for them all, as well as myself, of course, is just exhaustingly exciting.
Mm. And what are your thoughts now? What are your thoughts going to be when we witness that scene as Her Majesty's coffin is finally lowered into the royal vault to join her husband, Prince Philip, and then ultimately move then to the King George VI private chapel?
Well, of course, you know, for us all, it's an extremely poignant time because of the close connection we in the chapel today have all had with Her Majesty, Prince Philip, and all the members of the royal family. And of course, it will be hard for them all, and us all too, but a remarkable moment also for our new king, who knew us all so well and has stepped off with great pride and great dignity.
And the King, a naval officer himself.
Absolutely. And so we feel that very strongly, and that relationship, I'm sure, will always be there.
It is the case, though, isn't it? It's the case at all funerals, that is when it finally sinks in, the final committal. We've been in mourning for the last 10 days or so. I mean, is this the wrong phrase to use? We've kind of got used to it, but now it's really hitting home.
It really is, and I think, you know, when we first heard it, you know, 10 days ago, of this massive loss, we were all just taken by surprise. We knew, of course, her great continuity that she had, albeit at Balmoral and with her mobility problem, but she was there right to the end, and I think that for us all suddenly came true, and it's been hard for us all to bear over these last 10 days, and today in particular.
And Commodore, we very much appreciate you spending the time to talk to us here on Sky News. I know you've got to go and take your seat very shortly, but leave us in this interview with one of your final memories, your favourite memories of Her Majesty on board Britannia.
Well, there have been so many. I mean, I remember the happy times of Western Isles, and she was remaining on board, waiting to go and join the royal family who had gone ashore. Prince Philip was taking charge of the barbecue, and of course I was going to escort Her Majesty in the barge to go ashore, and she was doing her photograph album at the time. And she said, when I finish this, Commodore, well, actually she called me Tony, we'll be ready to go ashore. And these are just a minor moment, but there were many, many others, and very special times for us all.
Commodore Anthony Morrow, thank you very much indeed.
Thank you
for joining us.
Thank you.
Well, now hundreds of thousands of people lined the route, as you can see, of the procession from Westminster Abbey. Many, many thousands more will watch on as the State hearse passes by on its journey right now to Windsor as it makes its way through the outskirts of West London. Well, my colleague Gillian Joseph has been with some of those watching on the Mall. Gillian.
Yes, Dermot, thank you. The pictures that you're seeing at the moment are of the cortege going over Hammersmith flyover. Not as many crowds as previously. We've seen people lining the route as the cortege makes its way to Windsor. On the Mall at the moment, some people leaving, some still standing, staring, although the procession has now passed. But the mood is still sombre, and crowds are still here contemplating what they've just seen. Let's speak to a couple of people who are still here. I want to speak to Meghan and Katie.
Hi.
Very interesting names that you both have in terms of royal connections. What was it like for you the moment the cortege went past?
Sad, very moving. The silence on the whole of the Mall was breathtaking. I couldn't believe how silent so many people can be. And the marching and the troops and the slow marching just made you feel so emotional. And I'm so pleased I came.
And the mood still exists.
It does.
I feel now, but it's still quite quiet, isn't it?
It is. Nobody's shouting, nobody's running around, and it's very respectful.
And Katie, tell us what the moment was like for you. Obviously, you've had a very early start to the day, lots of preparation to be here, and you managed to be right at the front.
We were very surprised to be at the front, if I'm honest. We kind of expected to be at the back of a very big queue of people and not to actually see anything, but we were happy just to be here. We were happy if we ended up just watching it on a screen in Hyde Park. But to be at the front, we were really shocked and really pleased, yeah. So I cried instantly. I saw the coffin, and I actually missed the royal family completely. I didn't even see them. I was completely focused on the Queen. Yeah, she was everyone's grandmother.
And
we all loved her.
What was going through your mind at that particular moment when you saw the coffin for the first time?
Sadness for the royal family and for everybody, everyone that was here. And as my mum said, the respect of everybody. Everybody was so sombre, quiet and respectful the whole time. And in waiting, everyone was talking to each other, sharing treats, sharing memories. It was phenomenal, really. Yeah.
I can see you're still quite
Yeah.
Thanks so much for speaking to us. What will you do now, the rest of the day?
Desperate for a cup of tea. We haven't had a drink since 4:30 this morning. So, yeah, that's yeah, a cup of tea and a sit down in the park somewhere just to reflect on the day.
Okay, well, we'll let you go off and have that sit down and that
Thank you.
much and a cup of tea. Thank you very much for
And thank
speaking to
you.
us.
Thank you.
Thanks for
Thank
speaking
you.
to
Bye-bye.
us. As I said, many people still here. There's one gentleman I'd like to introduce to you who's come all the way from Arizona for this.
Yes, in America.
Why did you feel that you had to be here today?
It's probably one of the most historic moments in the foreseeable future. And I don't know if the monarchy will survive long enough to ever see this again. And not in my lifetime will there be another monarch who reigned for 70 years, who was also as beloved by the British people. When the coffin went by, there was 2 lorry drivers, big burly men, tattoos, and they began sobbing. And as an American, it's very difficult to understand what the Queen means to people until you're here and you're talking to people of all different walks of life about what it means to them and seeing their reaction. Because if a president died, you would never have this type of turnout.
Tell us about the moment you heard the news of the Queen's passing. Obviously, you were in America, still in America at that point.
So it was very early in the morning. I subscribed to Sky News on YouTube, and I saw it was just a purple square with her face, and it just said "Queen dies." And I immediately clicked on it, and it was a live feed. I think it was probably 6 p.m. your time, and immediately I just thought, I can't use the word I thought, but I immediately thought, wow, like what do I,
But absolutely worth making the journey for you.
Oh yeah, I booked my tickets immediately because I knew that the prices would go and the availability would go very high. And so I made the trip, and it's totally worth it. Even though, I'm an American, we don't walk, my feet are killing me. So yeah.
We'll let you get some rest. Thank you very much for
Thank you.
speaking to us. There we have one gentleman travelling all the way from Arizona to be part of today's proceedings. With that, I'm going to hand you to Anna Botting, who's at Westminster Abbey.
The muffled bells still sounding here at Westminster Abbey, Gillian. It is a bright day, warm now, and a first chance for some to see Her Majesty. Roads lined again for her. Never in my lifetime, we heard there, a history shared here in West London, as it will be in Windsor, where we go to Kay Burley. Kay.
Back to you in just a second, if that's okay. Thank you. Okay, meantime here on the long walk, it's 4.2 kilometres long. We'll see the hearse make its whole way up from one end right up to the castle. I have to tell you, it's 6, 8, 10 deep, people all wanting to pay their respects. Just less than 3 months ago, really, this is where they had one of the longest picnic tables in the country for the Queen's Platinum Jubilee. Very different sentiment today. Found 2 lovely people who'd like to talk to us. Hello. Tell me about your medals.
Yeah, I was in the army for 13 years. Went to Bosnia and got this one. Queen's Jubilee medal. And then Iraq more lately, but yeah, that was several years ago.
Thank you for your service. Why did you feel that you needed to come today?
It's just been that we've been watching it on the news, but really needed to be here. It was the final time really to see the Queen before, being put to rest. So it was something we really wanted to do.
Where did you come from today?
We've come from Cambridgeshire. Yeah, Cambridgeshire today. We just wanted to be here just to, like my husband said, just to pay our respects really, who's loved by many, and we just thought it was just the right thing to do,
You're quite a way back, aren't you? Are you comfortable that you'll get a good view, or was it just more the fact that you were here?
It was mainly because we're here, really.
Yeah,
but,
it's just to be with amongst everybody else, really. With the atmosphere here, I think speaks volumes, to be honest. And I think, it's just the right thing to do to be here, really, to pay our respects.
It's about another hour or so before we see the hearse make its way up the long walk into the castle, and finally for the Queen to be reunited with the love of her life again.
Yeah, that's
18
amazing.
months in waiting.
Yeah, that is amazing. It's really, quite amazing that, she is being reunited with him. Obviously had a long reign together. To be back there, it's obviously very special.
Yeah. Thanks very much indeed. I wonder if I could just squeeze in here, Kevin, and see if these Hi. I wonder if I could have a quick word with you, madam. We're live on Sky News at the moment. Why did you feel the need to come today? Hello.
Oh, hello.
Hi. Why did you feel the need to come today? You're live on Sky News at the moment?
Oh, hello, yes.
Hi.
Well, I feel the need to come today to pay my last respect to Her Majesty, our late Queen, you know, and she's been a wonderful person, such a lovely smile and really, really kind heart. And I just wanted to be here to wish her and her family all the best and to wish our new king a new beginning.
And you, madam?
Oh, I have the same sentiments, really.
Why did you come to Windsor rather than feeling that you wanted to go into central London? This is, of course, was home, really, wasn't it?
Yeah,
of course it was, yes. Well, basically, it was the queuing. You know, didn't feel I could queue for 12 hours.
No.
You know, but coming here to Windsor, at least we could bring our chairs, sit down and celebrate.
And what's the atmosphere been like?
Oh, it's been lovely. Yeah, everyone's friendly. We met a family from Lancashire.
Yeah.
So everyone's been good.
Yeah. And the sun's come out. It could have been very different. I've been here many times when the weather's not been very good at all. But everybody seems to be, you know, joined with the same purpose, that they want to pay their respects. But it's not overly sombre. People are sharing stories about the Queen.
Yeah, that's right. You've met her a few times.
I've met her, yes.
Tell me.
I've met her at Ascot. Not yet. Once at Ascot, and I used to go to the polo, the matches. Our box was right next to the royal box. And I lived in Hayes, Middlesex, and she came to Hayes when she was celebrating her 80th birthday.
Okay.
So
lots of people talked about her piercing blue eyes, and that's how they remembered her. How will you remember her?
I remember her by a lovely smile, a beautiful smile, and she just radiates.
Yeah, that's true. Yes. That's true. Excuse me. I wonder if I could have a quick chat with you, sir. Little person up there on your shoulders. You're live on Sky at the moment.
Oh, brilliant. Hello.
Hi. How's she coped?
Oh, yeah, she's been really good. She's been asleep for most of the time, to be honest, but she's woken up at the perfect moment, I think.
Yeah.
Not too long, and everyone will be turning up.
Yeah. Why did you feel the need to come today, sir?
It's a historical moment, I think. A moment of great change and great sadness, but also happiness and hope. And I thought it was really important to bring her along, something that maybe after all pictures and videos she'll be able to remember and look back on.
And she'll always know where she was when she saw the Queen for the very last time.
Yeah, she was up on my shoulders.
There we go. It's good to talk to you. Thank you very much indeed. Thanks a lot. Anna, the flights are still overhead just at the moment, but we are being told that they will be stopped very shortly indeed, so that when the Queen's coffin processes up the long walk here, it will not be interrupted by aircraft overhead. Windsor, of course, on the flight path, but that will be stopped very shortly indeed. A little bit later on, we're going to see if we can chat to another few people, see why they decided that they wanted to come all the way to Windsor today to pay their final respects to Her Majesty, who we'll probably see for the final time in around about an hour's time. But for now, back to you at the Abbey.
Reflections there from the Mall and the long walk in Windsor. Kay, thank you. Well, let's bring in Patrick Harrison, former Royal Communications Secretary to His Majesty the King and the Queen Consort, as they now are, and Louise Tate, the Queen's Scottish Communications Secretary. Welcome back to both of you. We heard reflections there from the crowds who wanted to come out and see this moment.
Yes. Absolutely, and I'm really struck today by the finality of all of this. Over the last 10 days, we've always known there's going to be another day, there's another event to look forward to. But this really is it. This is the final goodbye. And we're seeing it in a number of ways. This morning here, a very poignant service, I thought, and I was particularly taken when the choir started singing, and I'm sure others had moments through that service when they were particularly taken by what they were watching and listening to. And now, of course, people saying their goodbye as the hearse makes its way through London and on its way to Windsor. We've seen crowds applauding, we've seen crowds cheering, we've seen some flowers thrown, everybody wanting to be able to be part of that final goodbye.
There is a sense of history being made here, being watched by all of us. But the word finality is so hard, is it not, Louise, for all of those who are bidding farewell to their Queen?
Of course, it was a day that was inevitable after the last 10 days that we've seen. As Patrick said, there was always a something else and a something else, but today is the final goodbye, and I was particularly struck, as Patrick said, there's different moments, no doubt, over the last 10 days, but today the mass pipes and muffled drums, of course, would get me, but the diversity in that group really was just wonderful to see. And then, of course, Her Majesty's coffin pulled by the ratings from the Royal Navy. But what struck me also was seeing Her Majesty's equerry and former equerries walking alongside the coffin, and then 3 pages behind that. And, you know, she's been a constant in all our lives for so long. In so many ways, they were constants in her life for so long. And I watched inside as the ladies in waiting and former Lord Chamberlains were there, Lord Airlie and the Countess of Airlie, and I've had the wonderful opportunity to speak to them, and one of them was indeed there on that day in Kenya when the Duke of Edinburgh broke the news. And, you know, to think that she has been, and others have been with her for such a long time. And we've seen, of course, we think of the family, because we've seen the family, but they've been remarkable this week. But I think of those other people who she has been a constant for, and that was reciprocated. They were a constant for her, and saying goodbye, that finality must have just felt overwhelming.
There is a letting go that has to happen today, Rhiannon, also for her family, a private service that we will not see, but for her, reunited with her family, her mother, father, sister, and of course her husband.
Again, as we've seen right throughout the last week, we saw the royal family really supporting the Queen there around her, as they were in life, now in death. And they are all now heading to Windsor, where they will eventually, much later on this evening, be able to say the private goodbye at the burial service. But I think today at Westminster Abbey, it was dignified, it was emotional, but I think we saw all of those facets that made up what was a remarkable life, all of the different elements that mattered so much to her. So whether that was the military, the men and women of the Navy who were pulling that gun carriage, their heads bowed, paying the ultimate tribute, really, to their most loyal commander-in-chief. You then also had the family, of course, and we saw the new king and his now heir, Prince William, arriving at Westminster Hall together. This sense of a united front when it came to this moment, which we know for the king has been so important for him. Yes, he's had all of those constitutional responsibilities to carry out this week, but for him, his primary focus has been on leading his family and leading the nation in this moment of mourning. And now we will see them make their way to Windsor, a place that the Queen in recent years has spent so much more time because of the coronavirus pandemic, surrounded by those staff who were so loyal to her that Louise was talking about. And in Windsor, they will eventually get to say their final goodbye.
Royal Marines there joining police as streetliners, the crowds still building to see the Queen. But Dominic Waghorn, our international affairs correspondent, this has been a great leveller today, has it not? From that service here at Westminster Abbey are going to Windsor. They are few. What happens to everybody else?
Yes, I mean, they call death the great leveller, the great equaliser. Certainly has been at this funeral, hasn't it? Because we have seen kings, queens, emperors, empresses getting here by bus. It was an extraordinary moment, wasn't there, when our cameras were on the limousines taking the royal family to Westminster Hall, and rightly they should have been, and that's what our viewers saw. But while that was going on, we also spotted the Emperor of Japan leading a delegation of royals through a side entrance, well, the north entrance of the Abbey, but effectively being whisked in. And these are people who are, each of them in their own right, entitled to a state visit reception when they come here. But they've come simply as another attendee, another guest at this funeral, and they have got beyond reservations like the Emperor of Japan has, over sort of religious reservations over attending funerals. Others discarding the sort of privileges and distinctions of their rank and happy to get on buses to arrive here. And that is the draw of the Queen, even in death. And I think for all of them, determined to be here, determined to witness history in the making, and to have that connection. I mean, ordinary people have been lining up to pay their respects and to line this route of the cortege as it goes out to Windsor, because they want that connection with the Queen, but also dignitaries here as well want a connection with someone who's been a counsel and a connection with the past and the experience of their predecessors too.
The cheers, the applause. From China to Liechtenstein, the Pacific Islands. It's extraordinary how a woman of so diminutive in stature has such a...
Yes, I mean, it's the fact that she reigned so long. It's the fact that also she had this personality. And if you were a president, an American president in office for just 4 to 8 years, you could meet her, you could talk to her about the great presidents of the past. If you're a king or a queen, you could also talk to her about that. So she had that counsel, that wisdom that she could bring to these distinguished guests, and that's why they want to be here. She was the most famous person in the world, and they want to be at the biggest international event of this century.
And thanks, we heard from the royal family. You know, how will the Queen feel watching these pictures of the flowers thrown into the streets there, grateful to those people who queued for hours and hours, either in Edinburgh or here in London?
They'll be incredibly touched by the enormous emotion and support that's been shown over the last few days. Support for the Queen and remembering the wonderful 70 years of service that she gave. But we've also seen lots of support for the King and other members of the royal family as well. And I'm sure that they will draw strength and comfort from that. And it's really remarkable, isn't it? Here is a lady who is connected with all the great and the good, the emperors and the kings and the queens, but also you and I, just ordinary people who are throwing flowers on that route now and just want to say one final thank you.
The gratitude so clear to see, and the tributes we've heard, Louise, throughout the last 11 days, her kindness, her thoughtfulness, her attention to detail. This was a woman who cared.
Undoubtedly. She was most extraordinary at understanding people, reading people. We've heard this time and time again about how Her Majesty was able to put people at ease, and that includes the leaders of the world and ordinary people that she, ordinary people I say that, but members of the public that she might meet in the course of her public duties and public engagements. But that ability to connect, as Dominic said, that leveller, it was just such a thing to see, to allow her to move with ease wherever she went.
Well, the thank you, the tributes continue on the road to Windsor. Let's head there now, and to Dermot Monaghan.
Thank you, Anna. As the State hearse carrying Her Majesty the Queen's coffin leaves the environs of central London, as Anna was saying, it's making its way here to Windsor Castle, to the Queen's final resting place. She'll be laid to rest in St George's Chapel alongside her beloved husband, Prince Philip, the Duke of Edinburgh, whose funeral, of course, only took place 17 or 18 months ago. Then, ultimately, later this evening, they will both be laid to rest in a side chapel, a private memorial chapel, the King George VI Memorial Chapel, built by Her Majesty the Queen in remembrance of her father in 1969. She will be interred there alongside her parents, King George, the Queen Mother, and her sister Margaret. That will be in a private ceremony. Before that, later this afternoon, will be the committal service. It's a much more intimate, smaller event. Members of the royal family will, of course, attend. They've gone ahead of the hearse and have already arrived at Windsor Castle, so is the bearer party. The Guard of Honour are lining up, and members of the congregation have been taking their seats. Amongst them will be, as I say, it's smaller, will be Commonwealth realm Prime Ministers, former Prime Ministers of the UK. You saw them in Westminster Abbey, and many of the staff who've served Her Majesty the Queen and the royal family for so long and so loyally, and of course then those members of the royal family. This is where it becomes ultimately a family occasion as we watch those scenes as the crowds 5, 10 deep all the way along the road to here at Windsor Castle. Let's talk to our royal correspondent Laura Bundock. And Laura, as I say, first of all, it's a smaller, more intimate service, and the royal family have already made their way here from Westminster Abbey as the state hearse travels slowly to give people a chance to pay their final respects.
I think this journey meticulously planned, but the speed noticeable too, to allow the crowds you can see there along the route the chance to see the Queen for one final time as well. We know members of the royal family have already arrived here in Windsor. The royal standard raised just a few moments ago. The King is now here. And after the ceremony we've seen in Westminster Abbey, this committal service here a little later on in Windsor will feel smaller. It will feel more personal. The majority of the congregation will be members of staff who have worked or work on royal estates, made up also of Her Majesty's household as well. And we've seen many of them already making their way inside St George.